Hello everybody, welcome to Calculus Inc. Today we're going to be talking about two very interesting cars. Number one, an Acura RSX Type S, which I've owned many of. And another car is the Acura TL with the 6MT, a car that I've always looked forward to owning. You see, when I was younger, I could always afford the RSX Type S because they were a bit cheaper, but the TL 6MTs were always a little bit harder to come by, and I always liked them more, thinking, you know, it's got an extra 2 cylinders, more power, and an LSD and Brembo brakes, so it must be a better car. After many years, both of these cars have become quite cheap, and now I am able to afford both of them for a short period of time, so I've purchased both of them. And I've taken them out for a test drive, and today we're going to sort of compare the two cars. You know, you've got the cheaper Honda 4-cylinder versus the more upscale premium Acura with 6 cylinders, LSD, Brembo brakes and all that, and we'll talk about how they drive and kind of compare them to see how things are. So stay tuned and see what you think. Before we go into the driving, let's just talk looks a bit. Now, the RSX I've got is in really bad condition, you know, body-wise, it's got all the rest. The TL, on the other hand, that I have is a really clean car. But generally speaking, the TL is a very good-looking car. I mean, from this angle in particular, as you can see, it's a really nice-looking Japanese design. I think it will kind of last the test of time quite well. The RSX, on the other hand, it looks also really nice, but it's actually the proportionality of the car that's really nice. It's very proportional design, small and compact, and from this angle it actually does quite look nice, the sort of the rear three-quarter, as you would call it. Interior wise, the RSX is really well built, but quite simple. Has nice seats, you know, really nice steering wheel, of course wonderful shifter and all that. The TL, on the other hand, has a much more luxurious feel to it. You know, nice leather interior. I mean, for a 14-year-old car, the seats are still in great condition. Everything's great. It is, I think, better built than the even the RSX. But you know, the bigger steering wheel, it's designed definitely for more comfort than it is for you know, performance driving. All right, folks, let's see how she drives compared to the RSX. After that glowing review of the RSX. I know the last time I drove this car, I didn't have much. I feel like I was a little negative on it. So let's see how she is. Now the thing is that you know, like right off the bat, you can tell that the feel from the clutch and the shifter and the steering, it's just not as you know, it's just not as special as the RSX. The car just has a much sort of lazier feel to it compared to the RSX Type S. And this is this is the most pronounced when you drive the cars back to back. If you drive this car for a few days, you'll be perfectly happy with its performance. Personally, I mean, that's kind of what I experienced when I bought the car. You know, I have both cars, so when I drive this car for a few days, I don't miss the RSX at all. In fact, I kind of prefer driving this car over the RSX. I don't know why that is, even though it's a lot more, you know, even though the RSX is just a lot more of an engaging car to drive. This thing just feels like it's a lot more, you know, it just has more torque, it's more comfortable. And it just, I don't know, the engine kind of does have a little bit more, you know, you have to kind of work a little bit hard with this car to get it to shift the right way, to get it to, if you're rev matching it, things like that, versus the RSX where, you know, you can just kind of get in it and you can shift perfectly right from the get-go. The TL, you kind of have to learn it. There's a bit more of a learning curve with this car relative to the RSX Type S. I'm on a few twisty roads here, so let's see how let's see how she does on the twisty roads. Now, the thing I should say is that, you know, one benefit of the RSX versus this is that the RSX, you know, it doesn't feel much slower than this, but it is, and because of that, you know, that car you can kind of drive quickly without getting into a lot of trouble. With this car, I mean, you know, you put it in second, by the time you're in third, you're kind of going quite fast, so you really don't get that much enjoyment from driving it, you know, the sort of speeds where you can kind of enjoy a nice twisty roads without getting in trouble with the police. Whereas with the RSX, you know, the engine sound on it is just so much louder, so much clearer that you can really enjoy the car. It's kind of it feels fast even if you're driving it slow. With this car, that's not really the case. Now we've got some twisty roads here, and yeah, I mean, even the downshift on this car, it just doesn't have the same sort of the engine just doesn't seem like it's at home in this type of an environment. Not just the engine, but the suspension also, and particularly the suspension, but which I can't say for the RSX. I mean, the RSX, if you're on a twisty bit of road, the RSX, it's happy. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's not a Miata, but it's happy to be doing what it's doing. Whereas with this car, it just feels like it's more at home on the highway. So I guess what I would say is that if you're looking for more of a highway car, more of a cruiser, then definitely consider the TL with the 6MT. If you're more interested in carving canyons, then go for the RSX Type S. Now, in terms of practicality, actually, the RSX is really very good. If you realistically, if you don't have to carry 4 passengers or even 3 passengers on a regular basis, the RSX is great because it actually has a very nice hatch in the back. You can put your bike or whatever there. The TL is, if you have more people, then obviously the TL is going to be more practical because of the roomier back seats. The back seats on the RSX are obviously quite tight, but otherwise, the RSX is quite a practical car. In terms of fuel economy, it's probably a little bit better as well, but the TL isn't bad. The one other thing I would say about these two cars is finding a good one. I think if you are going to have a better luck finding a nicer example of a TL manual transmission than you are of an RSX. They're really hard, especially the Type S's. They're really hard to come by. And I think that's kind of it for this session here today. I'm just gonna turn around here. All right, so let's see how this RSX is let's see how this TL is to drive. And the one thing I'll say about this car right off the bat, and I'm not sure if the RSX is much better, but this car is actually really bad, is the turning radius on it. It's surprising how bad the turning radius is actually. In terms of the driving dynamics versus the RSX Type S, the RSX has a clear advantage over this car. You can tell that immediately as soon as you come to a few corners. I'm not sure if you guys can see the road ahead, but it's a little bit of a twisty road, and the RSX is just at home here, whereas this car feels like it's not. And it's not just the suspension; it's also the engine. The engine on the RSX is just sharper for when you downshift. It just has that sharper feel to it, which this car just doesn't have. I hate being down on the TL 6MT because it's definitely a car that I've always kind of wanted. As I mentioned, having driven 4-cylinder Hondas most of my life, I figured an extra 2 cylinders is going to be much better, right? But unfortunately, that's not the case. Having said that, I don't know why, but I have both cars and I find myself driving this more than the RSX. Maybe because I just got this recently and I've had the RSX for a while, I don't know. But this car just has more torque, and it just feels, it's smoother on the highway. It's more comfortable. If you're looking for a more comfortable kind of cruiser, a highway car, then for sure go for the TL, because the RSX is quite frantic. But if you're more interested in sort of carving canyons and having a sort of track day car or whatever, maybe I wouldn't say. I mean, you can track an RSX too, but you have to do quite a bit of modifications for it to probably be a good track car. But if you want, with a little bit of good tires and stuff, you can have the RSX be quite good quite good at sort of canyon carving or nice twisty roads. Whereas with this thing, it just kind of feels like it's really not happy in the corners. I mean, you've got there's not much fuel through the steering wheel and things like that. But then again, like I said, you take it on the highway or you're much happier. It just has a more comfortable, more sort of weighty feel to it, which the RSX doesn't. Now, in terms of practicality, both cars are actually surprisingly practical. I would say that if you're going to be traveling by yourself 95% of the times, I would almost say the RSX is more practical just because it's a little bit better on fuel, and also the hatch really makes it easy to put bigger things in the back. This one, you have to fold the seats down and stuff like that so that the opening isn't as big. Other than that, if you're going to be having 4 people in the car on a regular basis, then certainly you're going to need the extra space that the TL provides in the back seats, because the back seats on the RSX are honestly quite tight. The one thing that the RSX, again, and when I say RSX, I am talking specifically about the Type S. The regular ones are fine too, but the Type S I think is kind of the one that's going to be, kind of the more desirable one going forward. Finding a nice clean RSX, I mean, you're going to pay much less for a clean TL Type S than you are a clean RSX Type S. And the other thing is you're going to be able to find a TL, maybe not a Type S, but a regular TL with a 6-speed manual transmission, much easier than a clean RSX Type S. I mean, I've been looking for a clean RSX Type S for a while now, and they're really hard to come by. Whereas with this TL, they're also rare. In fact, I'm not sure you guys can comment on the numbers in terms of how many each of them were produced, but there's probably less TL manuals produced than the RSX Type S's, but I think people are kind of holding on to more of the RSXs, so that's why they're harder to come by. But then, a final point for the TL. I mean, the interior on it is kind of much more comfortable, much roomier, things of that nature. Although the RSX interior isn't bad either. I mean, it's got plenty of. If you're just sitting in the front, it's a very well-made interior. But the TL is just a lot bigger and roomier and things of that nature. Plus, I think the stereo might be a little bit better. If you're looking for more detailed in terms of videos on what to look for in these cars, I've actually made 2 other videos, so I think this will be my last TL video. But you can kind of see what to look for in terms of buying guides and things like that. But just as a comparison, me personally, I'm kind of torn. I mean, right now I'm driving the TL and I prefer it. But the RSX, is just so much sharper. It just has it has a feel of a car where every time I get into it, I just feel like it's a special car. And I can't say the same about the TL, unfortunately. So there you have it. That's the review of these 2 cars. Please comment on the videos to let me know what you think. I'm going to be making a video of a 350Z next. So if you guys are around, please do take a look at that video and let me know what you think. All right, folks. So let's see how the TL drives. Now, sorry, not the TL, the RSX. Now, right off the bat, I mean, because Honda's thing is the 4-cylinder engine, and because of that, this car, in my opinion, the feel of the steering, the feel of the shifter, is better than the TL. It just has this, it just has this responsiveness, this uniformity about it that the TL doesn't. The TL feels heavier. The drivetrain and engine don't seem like they're sort of perfectly linked, whereas this car, it does. And I think the reason for that is also because this car was designed specifically as a manual, so you can't get an RSX Type S with an automatic transmission, where the TL, most of them were sold with an automatic. So because of that, it's a car where the manual transmission isn't as nicely configured as as it is in the RSX Type S. How is your drive? Well, we've got some nice twisty roads here, and the difference between this car and that TL is that, in relatively stock forms, these cars, the RSX, it likes the corners. You can hustle it around a corner, and you're not going to feel like the car is out of place. The TL, unfortunately, on the other hand, as I mentioned, it really doesn't like to be hustled in the corners that much in relatively stock form. I mean, maybe in some long, some long bends it's okay, but in the tighter things, it's not. Now, again, as I mentioned, the TL has an LSD, so you would think that car would kind of handle better, but it's just the way Honda has set this car up, it really does handle a lot better than the TL. The other thing is, this car has significantly less power than the TL, and it's down 2 cylinders. But this car does not feel, to me personally, underpowered. I mean, if you come out of something with a lot of torque, like a GTI or an STI or something like this, yeah, the power on this car is gonna feel a little underpowered to you initially. But the charm is in revving this car. I mean, it just loves to rev, right? And then that you can't really put a price on. So, if you're shopping between these two cars, I'd ask what your priority is. If your priority is buying a car that is a comfortable car, you need the back seat, because this car doesn't, it has back seats, but they're not comfortable. If you need the back seats on a regular basis, if you want a comfortable highway cruiser, if you really value the torque of that V6 engine, then sure, go for the TL. But if you can, if you really want, more of a driver's car, more of a driver's experience, then this thing is just an absolute hoot. I mean, the way it shifts, the feel of the clutch, it's so natural, so organic, that the TL really doesn't come close. Now, the TL is a very charming car to drive. Once you, initially after this, you're kind of disappointed in it, but I mean, well, let's just hear the sound of this car. Oh my goodness. I mean, the TL just doesn't make sounds like this car does. That's unfortunately the thing about it, there you go. I mean, I'm not sure if the sound is coming through to you guys or not, but we'll slow it down because we got some cyclists here, which is fine, but here, we'll cross the cyclist and then here. So yeah, I mean, you've got, both are great cars. It is much harder to find a nice clean RSX Type S than it is a TL6MT, because the TL6MT, the owners are a bit more responsible in my opinion, so they didn't get too much cheap modifications. A lot of these RSXs have cheap modifications and stuff on them, so that kind of ruins the car. But both are wonderful cars. In my opinion, I'd take the RSX. I've done some video, I'm not sure if you watched the other video of me talking about why I think this is actually a future classic. I mean, you're not going to lose your money on a TL either, but this car is a lot, it's going to increase in value. The other thing is that this car is it's more reliable than the TL in my opinion. The front end on it, let's just give it some beans just to really see how this thing sounds. I mean, you're not really going anywhere. It's a slow car, but the sound of it is just absolutely wonderful. And, you can rev it at 5,000 every day, and it just loves to rev. So it's a wonderful car. Both are great cars. Let me know what you guys think about the between the two cars. I mean, as I mentioned, to me personally, the TL was always the car that I kind of look forward to or look up to, having owned an RSX before, with the extra 2 cylinders and the LSD. But now that I drive them both side to side, I mean, the RSX Type S is really a wonderful, wonderful car. So I guess we'll leave it with that, and we got some other content coming in the next little while, so hopefully you enjoyed that as well.